This episode of the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast is sponsored by Jamie's Designs, your one-stop shop for custom laser creations, gifts, and home decor. Looking for a special present for a loved one? Stop by Etsy at Jamie's Designs Shop, or visit us on Facebook or Instagram by following the link in the show description, or type at JAMIESDES on your device. We are making your laser dreams come true. Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with Emmett Muckles. We are in a time of unprecedented times if you are alive. We are in a time of the pendulum shifting. The scales are shifting. Our feet up under us is going through a transformational moment. And this is called growth. If you were a kid at some point in your life, and I hope you were, you just didn't pop onto the planet, you went through this thing called growing pains. What growing pains are is they're very uncomfortable for you to progress. And that is what we are going through now. Today, my guest is Jeff Rasley. I had him on the podcast back in 2017, and we were talking about, how life is a little bit different and you have a mind shift and you have to get out in the world and you have to travel so that your mind is open so that when new things come to you, you can accept them more readily. You can be a human being about it. But he's written a new book, and we're going to get into the title. We're going to get into the subject matter because it's very poignant, because it really connects with what we're going through today. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Emmett. Good to be with you again.
You too. Thank you for the book, by the way, because I recently started reading again, literally going to the library or going to the bookstore and getting books. And because I said it's hard for me to read the electronic versions until I got your book. Your book has had me captivated. So give me the whole title and how you came up with it.
Okay. The title is Anarchist, Republican, Assassin, a Political Novel. And the way I came up with the title is the major section of the book is divided into 3 chapters. And the chapter titles are The Anarchist, the Republican, the Assassin. So that was an easy title. And the book centers on the story of a guy named Jack Blair, and this is a novel, So it's fiction, who, when he was a young man, he was an anarchist militant revolutionary. And he eventually grew out of that, ended up a very wealthy, very successful businessman. It helped because he married the boss's daughter, and his best friend in college was the boss's son. So, talk about privilege. He definitely had some advantages there, but he came from a very modest, small town background. But was a natural salesman and a very good businessman, very successful, taking over and running this family business. But eventually, the love of his life, his wife, died, and he was living alone in his big mansion. And now we fast forward to this year, and the pandemic hits. And he's located in my hometown, the city of Indianapolis, and he's all alone in this big mansion during the lockdown. and he starts going crazy. And what sets him off is having been this anarchist when he was a young guy, he went around the country and would go to peaceful anti-war and civil rights demonstrations and would try to turn them violent, which anarchists are still doing to this day.
Yep.
Yeah. And I had personal experience with this back in the early 70s myself, which is some of the background of this book. But so he's alone in his house, and he's locked down, socially isolated, and he starts seeing these images on TV after the George Floyd murder by cop of current peaceful demonstrations becoming violent. And he sees young men all dressed all in black like he used to do. And his personality regresses, and he thinks he is a young anarchist again. And I won't give away the spoiler, the cliffhanger, but what he does after he goes crazy at the age of 70, thinking that he's a young anarchist revolutionary, is the climax of the first section of the book.
Yeah, I started reading the book, and I'm going to be honest, because you give no physical description of the character. Initially, I thought this character was a black character. I did. I had to literally go back and read. And the reason I say that is because I remember growing up in the early 70s. I was very young, but you take in a lot of information. You know, the Black Panthers were prevalent. There was a lot of protests, as we're seeing today. And it just reminded me of some of the people that were in my community. You know, and they were knowledge-based. And it wasn't so much anti-government. It was anti-establishment. It was pro-people. It was pro-community. And when you're controlled by something that's so far from you, it can kind of get detached. And so that's some of the things that they were seeing. But then as I moved back forward, I was like, oh, wait a minute, let me put some things together. The city where this person was born, because I live in Indiana as well. I'm like, there are no black people there. I mean, especially during this time period that we're talking about. And then I started seeing it from a different light. And as you said, in conjunction, when I started seeing the protests, my daughter said she was going to some protests. I said, dear, be very, very careful, because there are some people there who are there to incite a certain reaction, and you have to understand who you're dealing with. Also, came to mind from me reading The Diary of an Economic Hitman. Like, that all comes into play into my mind. But tell me, what made you decide to put this out, and what was your time frame of putting it together?
Yeah, well, this book I wrote in the shortest amount of time of all of the 11 books I've written, and it just flowed. Writers sometimes talk about writing in a white heat. I really hadn't experienced that before, because I've outlined and talked over with my wife, who's also my editor. And this book I wrote in 2 months. It typically takes me 6 to 10, even as much as 12 months to write a full book, full manuscript. So, but what inspired the book actually came to me in like a flash, in a moment. I'm at home watching the protests following the George Floyd murder, and the images, and as they turned violent, the images that I saw on TV were so similar to actual experiences I had. I was in involved in 2 demonstrations when I was 18, 20, that age, which became violent because anarchists, a small group of anarchists, came and incited violence. And I talked to one of the anarchists. This was down in New Orleans. And he told me about how he was in this group that went around the country, and their strategy was to go to peaceful demonstrations. And back in the late 60s and early 70s, with civil rights and the war in Vietnam, there were demonstrations going on somewhere every day. So it's like they had a big market, and they would go to a demonstration, and they had different techniques to try to incite the crowd to violence. And he told me that it really wasn't very difficult, because typically in cities, a lot of local people had complaints against cops, complaints against the establishment, and didn't need a lot of encouragement to turn violent when the cops showed up.
Yeah.
And so that's so anyway, so I, sort of seeing those images on TV just a few months ago and remembering how similar it was to what I experienced, almost 50 years ago, I just had this inspiration to write about it. And then I also had an ulterior motive. And which is why it has the subtitle, A Political Novel. And my ulterior motive is, I think Donald Trump has been a terrible president. I think he's handled the pandemic incompetently. And I think instead of pouring oil on the waters and being compassionate and trying to engage with Black Lives Matter movement, with the current civil rights leaders about the police brutality and just policing issues we have in this country, he's used it as a means of division within the country. And so my political motive was also to write a novel, to use the art of literature to encourage people to vote out Donald Trump.
So Donald Trump won this election, and I keep trying to give the gentleman the benefit of the doubt. But here's a couple of things that I realized about this situation is politics is a community. It's just like when you go to a company, there's management, there's middle management. Well, there's upper management, there's middle management, then there's workers. Or just like the Army, there are people who are recruits and grunts. There are people who are middle management, and then there's generals. Those crowds don't mix. And you just can't come from the outside and jump in. So there's a system there. Now, I understand where the American public was coming from. They wanted an outsider. But I think it was rigged because so many people were against Hillary Clinton that they felt no recourse but to elect Donald Trump. What I was trying to figure out is, what has he done that is good for the long term for the country? Do you have any insight on that?
Well, the typical thing that supporters will say that, and they think that most people would agree with, is the stock market, and before the pandemic, employment. I mean, we had historic low unemployment rate. The stock market was making a lot of money for everybody in it, yeah. Myself included.
Yeah.
To what extent Trump really gets credit for that? I think it's a real mixed bag, because under Obama, after the 08-09 recession, everything was trending in that direction. Unemployment rate was going down, stock market was going up. So did Trump just ride the wave that Obama started? And the facts are the facts. History is history. There was historic unemployment. The stock market was doing great under Trump. So then the pandemic occurs, and now we have the real challenge of leadership. Because when you're riding the wave and everything is already going great, how much leadership, management, talent does it take to just keep riding that wave? Well, so the pandemic comes, and we see, in my view, what a terrible leader Trump is. He's always talking about how America is number one. Yeah, under the pandemic, we're number one in the rate of infections, the rate of death.
Yeah,
we are number one in the world at handling this thing as badly as you possibly could. And then you lay on top of that the problems that, we've had historically in terms of policing within the Black community, and how that really came to a head when all of us watching TV saw this murder in slow motion. And so this was an opportunity. This was a moment where something really, a transformative opportunity. And how does Trump handle it? What does he do in reaction to the protests? On June 1, he orders either he or Attorney General Bill Barr orders the military police to clear Lafayette Square of protesters who at that time were engaging in no violence whatsoever, using pepper spray, using tear gas, using shields and batons to force these people out so that Donald Trump can walk across the street, hold a Bible up, and have his picture taken and talk about how you have to dominate protesters. So
I think with Donald Trump, it's a cult of personality. It literally is a cult of personality. And I know this. Most Americans, don't read. That whether they're black, white, green, or blue, they just don't really read. No one picks up the newspaper and reads. Our news publications have become about personal editorials or slant versus the facts. And what many Americans don't realize is that Donald Trump was a rich man. And unless you've traveled in the circles, you don't realize people of certain economic status don't just accept you. But I will give the man credit. He used psychology to the nth degree to get into the White House, because he looked at the majority and said, hey, how can I bring these people into my point of view? What are their pain points? And he hit them dead on. Now, one thing I want to say, which I think is odd, because you're a Caucasian male in Indiana, and I know this for sure. You are on the fringes of the ideology against Trump. Because, there are so many pro-Trump signs in Indiana. It mind boggles me. But, we live in America, so you have the freedom of choice. With this book, what do you hope to attain?
That it becomes a bestseller and I jump up from being a multimillionaire to a billionaire. So like I said, my ulterior motive, the political motive in the book, is to help people realize how poorly Trump has performed as a president, because the main character, Jack Blair, is a loyal, conservative Republican businessman. But from the moment that Trump begins running for president, Jack Blair sees through him, and he sees this is not a true conservative. This is not a true Republican. And this guy is a very talented snake oil salesman who is a narcissist, who is in this game for himself. And so even though this is a white guy from a small town in Indiana who, although he was a radical as a youth, has become a conservative Republican, he sees the problems with Trump and he's furious, and he gets angrier and angrier that his fellow Republicans don't see this. And of course, some of them have. I mean, we know about some very well-known Republicans, most recently John Bolton, who bolted the Trump PAC, but George Will, David Brooks, really a lot of the intellectual elite of the Republican Party see Trump exactly the same way that my character, Jack Blair, sees him. And the difference is that these people have written books and gone on the speaking circuit to declare their opposition to Trump. Unfortunately, Jack just goes crazy. And which is, again, it goes back to his youthful time as an anarchist, which he has carried a very deep-seated guilt within him for years and years, and never told his family, didn't tell his wife, didn't tell his kids. No, but he kept this as a secret. So that's when the riots following the George Floyd murder, he has this PTSD reaction, and it comes to the surface, and he has to act out.
You know, a lot of things have come to light in the post-George Floyd incident. The word Antifa has come to the forefront. This country was founded from Antifa movement type things. It was founded in rebellion. And what I mean by this country was founded in its current state, because there was a country here before, there were people here before, but they were conquered, slaughtered, and it was taken over. And this goes back to my statement that most people don't read. Most people are, and I feel this, there's a level of ignorance, even on my part. I know that I'm ignorant. So what I do is make sure that I go and try to understand whatever is coming my way, which I think most people are not, because I probably got rid of 500 Facebook friends. Just one day sat down and went, nope, 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 nope. And it's growing because people feel that they have to let their inner self out or have the freedom under the Trump administration out, where under Obama they didn't. And we don't remember our history, our even recent history, because before Trump came in, we had Obama. And I started asking some people that I know, young people. So if you're under the age of I'd say 35, you don't remember 2008. It probably didn't affect you because you were an adolescent or a child, and those people are heavy in the economy right now. So they don't remember what what the Bush situation was. They don't remember 2008. They don't remember how dire it was, how many people were unemployed, and how the banks had just shut everything down and wasn't loaning money, and that bubble crashed. People are very ignorant. So I am glad that you wrote a book, but what other ways are you going to help promote this so that you can spread awareness about a different point of view that someone is not considering?
Well, this is one way, talking to you. My family has our own little publishing company, and so we're very good at publishing our own books. And yeah. I think if you've seen it, it looks very professional. It is, because my wife and I have both been employed as professional editors. She's an English professor. I was a lawyer for 30 years, our lives have been all about writing. And one of our sons is our cover creator. So, and he's very good at, Photoshop, the art side of creating a book. But we really don't have an advertising budget. And the great advantage of having your own publishing company is you get to publish your book. It's going to be published, or there's going to be a divorce over it. But that hasn't happened yet. The downside is we don't have the distribution mechanism to get the book into bookstores all across the country. I have what's called a select, Amazon calls it Amazon Select, a select deal with Amazon, so that Amazon is the exclusive distributor. It can be purchased through a bookstore, but the bookstore has to order it from Amazon. And there's some advantages to that because Amazon will do some level of fairly minimal but free marketing for you, and the online distribution. So, but you raise the challenge that is there for all independent writers, writers who don't have a major publishing house behind them.
Yeah.
How does somebody learn about your book when there's 2 million other books on Amazon to choose from?
And they're coming out every day. But I think this book will really open up some eyes and perspective because it really captured me. Like I said, I'm reading the electronic version of it, and I usually hate reading electronic versions. It doesn't keep me captivated. But what you did is you did it in this conversation story form that is so engaging that I couldn't put it down. My problem is, so at night, before I go to sleep, my wife and I usually spend like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour reading. Usually, but there's a downside to that. When you read in bed, your mind is programmed. If I read a certain amount of time, you have to go to sleep. So if I read a book now, I start going, no matter what time of day or night it is. But the book is really engaging because I think I got it a couple of days ago. And I'm already deep into it. I'm into the Republican part of the book. So I want to thank you for actually writing the book from the position that you're in, from the position that you are on this planet, because that voice is not heard. What we mostly see, and what I mean by this is a person of your age, person of your physical makeup, because you're not hearing that point of view in the narrative.
Yeah, I'm in the demographic that should be a Trumper.
Yes.
And I grew up in an all-white town. I mean, we actually had one black resident who most of us didn't even know he lived in town because he was a college professor in our little college. The town is called Goshen. It's more than tripled in size from when I was a kid, and we do have black residents now. But back then, I was always a curious child and a curious person. When I went off to college, I requested a roommate, that I would have a roommate who was a minority. And I got a black kid from Indianapolis. And that was the first black person I ever knew. My only contact with black people before that was playing sports. And they were always on the other team.
And that is very indicative of the United States, that there are so many people who stay within their own community. They don't live what the premise of America was intended to be.
Yeah. So then my next roommate was a Jewish guy from New York. I married, my wife was an ethnic Catholic. My community was mostly Protestant. So, I mean, I've always found people who had different backgrounds from me interesting, which that is how you learn. That's how you grow. You encounter people different from you. You encounter cultures different from you. traveled to over 45 countries because I love experiencing different cultures. And the thing that's disturbing about Trump is what he wants to appeal to is exactly the opposite of that. Most of us have some level of curiosity, some more than others. I mean, most people, to some extent, find differences interesting, but we also have a level of fear of the other, fear of difference. And so a good leader, somebody who wants to make America greater, would promote the curiosity, the wanting to experience people that are different from us. And instead, Trump focuses on the fear of the other, the fear of difference. And that's what his base, we're always hearing about his base, has created, is because he determined that the largest demographic that you could take that appeal to is older white people. And so that's who his base is. And he's pushed all the buttons to, get them to respond their fearful reaction as opposed to their expanding, curious reaction.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize something, that this has been a long struggle, which I consider the dismantling of America, so to speak. And it started way before now. It started, in my mind, probably after World War II, probably in the 60s. And it really hit home when Nixon pulled us off the gold standard, because now we're a fiat currency country, which we have no value. So the only way we make money is if we spend money. So we can print money, but it has no value. The other thing is, in the Clinton administration, they outsourced all of our jobs. They opened the borders. We don't make anything. And I remember when this hit home, I believe it was 2011, 2012, when I left the country and went to Europe. And I realized what our number one export is. It's culture. It's nothing physical. It's nothing you can put your hands on except maybe a CD, but not even that, or maybe an MP3 now, or a clothing style. But we export culture. And I was like, whoa. But if you look at everything around us, if I look at everything in the room here that I have, and I have a lot of stuff, nothing says made in America. Because it's all made in China, or it's made in Taiwan, or it's made in India. And we're even exporting our intellectual services now. So you need to talk to someone. You talk to someone from another country to help you out here. So ours is, they just need us to spend money to keep the country floating, so that, and the way they do that is to appeal to your emotional side, your feelings of the majority of the base. But this book is pretty awesome, and I'm going to enjoy reading it. And can you tell people where they can get it?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon and type in the title, Anarchist, Republican, Assassin, or type in my name. I have an author page, so all of my books are there. I have a website which has links to all the books, and it's my full name, Jeffrey, Jeffrey, Rasley, Rasley.com. And I really appreciate you talking up the book, and I'm delighted that you're enjoying it. It was really interesting to me that you said that you thought the character at first was black, because some of the things he talks about when he's describing his youth is, he says, like, well, the Black Panthers appeal to me more than Martin Luther King, because I'm the kind of guy that if you pushed me, I hit back. I just, it's not within me to be a pacifist. And so I can see how early on in the book you could see that. And another interesting sidelight, the the audiobook is right now in production, and the first narrator that auditioned for it thought the lawyer was black, and so he narrated her voice. The narrator is white, but he narrated her voice, and he really nailed the black female voice, but she's not.
I didn't pick her up. I picked her up as white. I literally pictured her with blonde hair or red hair.
Yeah. Well, and of course the physical description when you're writing a book, when the main character, it's first person point of view. So like you said, there's no physical description of him. Well, that's because it's in his point of view.
Right.
And so, he's not going to say, "Hi, Ms. Lawyer, I'm, 6 foot tall." And so it's sort of little bits of physical description kind of leak into it. But it's writing from that first person point of view kind of narrows exactly what you can say about your characters.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoy talking to you the 2 times we have, and I hope we'll do it again.
All right, thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, we are all billionaires. We are all made of the same stuff. Universally, we're made of the same stuff. We're made up of atoms, and atoms are these little particles that kind of join together to work together, and then they share these little things called electrons to make other complex stuff where you get up to a cell. And then once you get up to a cell, those cells start to migrate and change and do some things, and they start to work together to make the self. See how this works out? But if you go out into the universe and you start looking back upon us, we look like those atoms. Figure that. And if you come down and you look at us from a 10,000 foot view, we look like these little dots all circling around. So as you go out and as you go in, it all starts to look the same. We're fractal. We're all like the stars. We're billionaires. So just think about it. In your hand, just your hand alone, there are at least 1 billion cells. In your diversity of your gut, there's 1 trillion cells, and they're not just you. They're not just a part of you. There are invaders that help you to survive. They're called bacteria. What I am saying is, you have to live in a community. You have to understand that we are all the same. So when you meet another person that can communicate with you or has like the similar attributes to you, treat them with love, honor, and respect. Till next time, love you all. Peace.